There is a lot of useful information about how to survive an animal attack, such as how to stay alive, on the internet. Experts say that if a lion attacks you, you shouldn't try to outrun it because lions can run up to 50 miles per hour. Instead, you should face it head on and try to look big no matter what. If you run into the bear again, make yourself look big and scream and shout like a madman. If that doesn't work, fall down and act like you're dead. We've been told that if it's a shark, we shouldn't play dead because the shark might take that as an invitation to eat us. Instead, we should make eye contact with the shark. Don't splash around, and you might want to curl up in a ball. This is easier said than done. But in this episode, we'll look at one of the craziest dangers: what would happen if a whale swallowed you by accident. Or maybe we should say that stories about whales eating people have been around for a long time. You may be familiar with the story of Jonah from the Old Testament. He was said to have been eaten by a big fish. They might have meant a big animal. Ron is a whale at heart. It says that the big fish then ate him because he had done bad things. If he hadn't changed his mind and thanked Allah, he would have stayed inside the fish. We don't think that repenting would make the big fish throw you back out these days. Now, let's look at how big a whale is and how big its mouth is before we talk about newer stories of people who say they were eaten by whales. The blue whale, which is the biggest, can be about 100 feet long. About 400,000 pounds is how much they can weigh. As for the important matter of its gaping kisser, its tongue alone is expected to weigh as much as an average-sized Asian elephant. One website says that you and 400 of your friends could fit in its mouth. Then there are sperm whales, which will be on the show today. Even though they are the biggest toothed whales, they are smaller and a bit scarier. Even though they're small, they're not easy to beat. If you've ever read a book that starts with "Call me Ishmael," so that's Moby Dick for you. Not a fan of reading? Sperm whales can grow to be very big. It is 67 feet long and weighs 112,435 pounds. There are people who eat about 3% of their body weight every day, which is a lot. So, what we're saying is that it wouldn't be hard at all to get a person or a group of people into a whale's mouth. But it hasn't happened yet. Well, you may have read the latest story about this supposedly happening that has been going around the internet, but by now we all know, or at least we hope you know, that you can't believe everything you read on the internet. This particular story told us that in 2015 a Spanish fisherman named Luigi Marquez was swallowed by a whale and lived in its belly for 3 days before emerging in one piece with the best ever story to tell his mates. Lo and behold, 3 days ago, a questionable spiritual website was the first to tell the story. That's the same time that Jonah took a break from work while he was inside the big fish. It was all a lie. But this didn't stop many websites from spreading the story. Yes, we should all be sad about the decline of journalists, but let's find out more about why men are going missing in Wales. The most famous story that hasn't absolutely completely been debunked is the tale of a man called James Bartley aka the modern Jonah. It's said that he was eaten by a whale in 1891, but that the whale died and the man was still alive in its stomach. At the time, both the British and American press talked a lot about this. One British news site had a headline that said, "A modern Jonah is saved." Even though the store was also run by many American newspapers, Mr. Bartley, who was 38 at the time, had been a sailor on the British ship Star of the East. On their long journey, a big whale was swimming near the Falkland Islands, which are in South America. They dropped a couple of boats and went after the beast with harpoons. The little boats were no match for the massive whale and it tipped them, even though it had already been killed by 2 harpoons. Most of the crew was saved, but one person drowned and another went missing, and is thought to have also drowned. This was our dear Mr. Bartley's ship managed to finish the whale off and pull it on board. After the crew had been cutting the whale open for about a day and a half, they saw something move. A man curled in a ball covered in whale's stomach. It was the missing sailor, and that's the story. He had apparently been inside the whale for 36 hours. This is how it was written up in the newspapers. When the workers were trying to clear it out and put the chain around it, they were surprised to find something doubled up in it that moved. He got better, and this is supposedly what he told the crew about his internal adventure. At least one source says that he was surrounded by darkness and felt like he was sliding along a smooth path that moved and carried him forward. He came to a place with more space and was able to move around. When he felt a slimy substance on the walls, he realized he had been swallowed. This was fake news from the late 19th century, but of course people have been telling lies and passing them on since they first learned how to talk. The investigators then did some digging into this story. In fact, there was a ship with that name sailing in that part of the world at that time, but it wasn't made for hunting whales, and there was no John Bartley on board. The wife of the captain also said this. The whale story was not true in the least. I was always with my husband. The Star of the East was where he was. When my husband was in her, no one ever fell overboard. A good sea story, like the one the sailor told, is hard to beat. But let's take a closer look at the science behind the issue. Well, nobody would say that a person couldn't fit in the mouth of a whale. But after the first entrance, what would happen? One scientist says, if it were a blue whale, we wouldn't even fit down its esophagus because it's too small, so we might end up in its mouth. But we would just be thrown out again. But toothy whales are a whole different story. Both sperm whales and killer whales can eat food that is bigger than we are. One scientist says that if we were able to get all of those sharp teeth and go down the hole, the next problem would be dealing with the whale's digestive enzymes, which would burn your skin and make you feel pretty bad. And if you were still alive, you'd end up in one of 4 chambers in the stomach. You can pat yourself on the back if you make it all the way down, but you'll die very quickly because there's no air down there. Just methane gas, which isn't very healthy. The Smithsonian Magazine, whose scientific information we can trust, agreed with the scientists who said that there is no air inside of fish when they were asked if humans could live inside them. I think that's what will really get you in the end. So, I'm afraid no, we can't find any reliable news sources that say anything else. In fact, a journalist who worked for Salon spent days looking through the archives at the New Bedford Whaling Museum Research Library. He found no cases of whales swallowing people, let alone people surviving. If you mess with these creatures, you might lose an arm or leg, but as far as we can tell, they don't want to eat a whole person. We've seen videos of people getting too close to giant whales as they swim with their mouths open, trying to grab a bunch of fish. The man looks small, so he could have ended up in the whale's mouth at the very least. Be careful not to get in the way of a whale's mouth. This was also on a site for divers. The diver remembers getting hit hard by the whale shark. Then, head first, the diver was sucked into the whale shark's mouth and half swallowed to her guys. Divers struggled for a short time to get out of the whale shark's mouth before the shark spat them out. The shark was there, but you get the idea. Some people haven't been as lucky, and the animals have chewed on them instead of spitting. So, do you think a whale has ever eaten someone? Could you really stay alive for 36 hours in a whale's stomach? Tell us in the comments what you think. Check out our other video, as well. What if the US paid off its debt? Thanks for coming to watch. As always, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.